Everyone has them, whether it's soaring in the sky, traveling through an unknown forest, or kissing someone you desire. Dreams. The images that play in your head while you lie there motionless in the dark. That personal movie starring you. Well, sometimes that movie can change and take a dark turn. 1 minute you're flying through the air, but now you're plummeting to your death. Sitting in a beautiful forest, now you're lost, running from a monster. About to kiss your crush, and now you're naked, in front of everyone. Nightmares happen to all of us, and there is nothing you can do about it. A daunting thought. To go to bed after a long day thinking, I hope I have a nice dream tonight, then falling victim to a terrible nightmare. What are nightmares? What are dreams? There are many theories on what dreams are and what causes them. Some suggest that dreams are information you've absorbed and experienced the day or days prior, randomly forming unorganized situations, creating dreamscapes made up of your personal dream images. Dreams are also seen as messages your subconscious is trying to tell you about your own life, or warnings about your current mental state. Nightmares, on the other hand, are most commonly caused by stress in your waking life, or past traumatic experiences that never truly leave your memory, with distorted information that is blurred and doesn't make sense, and the dream images are threatening, making your dreams and nightmares confusing and scary with very realistic feelings. Another, more unconventional theory is that dreams are connected to the astral plane, or spirit world, where spirits and even people, with practice, can walk. This could mean there is a connection between life and death through dreams, and dreaming is a tool that can be used allowing us to peek through the veil and take a glimpse into what lies beyond. A spiritual gate we are able to walk through anytime and explore other realms. But what happens when something else walks through that open gate? An unwanted guest. I'm Charlie Conlon, and this is the nightmare I had last night. On a stormy night, I awoke from my sleep to a sound in my house. I lay in bed, looking around my room. What was that? I thought, sitting there waiting to hear it again. After some time, I shut my eyes and went back to sleep. Maybe it was just the rain hitting my window. While dozing off in the comfort of my bed, I heard a distinct knock. I pulled away my covers and sat up, still and quiet. I climbed out of bed and slowly crossed my cold bedroom to the door. The door was open, so I peeked around the corner, down a long, dark hallway. I stood quietly, listening, studying the extraordinary hallway. The ground was freezing. There, again, but louder this time. Someone was in my house. I slowly made my way down the unusually long corridor. It was difficult to see, and hard to recognize how long the corridor was. I finally reached the end and stepped out into my living room. It was colder, much colder. I looked around, but the room was empty. Something was different about it. The color was weak, and the air was stale. I stood there quietly for a moment. I could hear something. I scanned the area. Across the room, I saw it. One of the dining room chairs gradually moving away from the table. I stood frozen. After a moment, I crept over to the table and inspected the chair, seemingly ordinary now. The room got much colder, and I started to shiver. I walked over to the window and watched the tree violently shake in the gust of the storm. The room became even colder, and I could see my breath. Suddenly, there was a strange sinking feeling in my gut, and I started to feel tense, rain pelting on the window. The atmosphere was rotten. A breeze pressed the hairs on the back of my neck. Someone was standing directly behind me. I could feel their proximity. I clenched my teeth and quickly turned around. Nothing was there. Standing in the dark, cold living room, I could still feel something, a presence. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the kitchen, like bare feet slowly walking on the tiled floor. I quietly approached the kitchen, my body pushed against the wall next to the door. I could hear something shuffling around. For a moment, I stood there listening. I inched closer to the edge of the door to look and witness who it was. I peeked around the corner. Nothing. No one. I walked to the center of the kitchen and stood there puzzled. And nothing was out of the ordinary, except the staleness of the air and the deep cold throughout the house. I walked back to the living room. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was here. I blew warm air into the palms of my hands in an effort to warm my body. Suddenly, footsteps to my left, again to my right. I looked around, but I couldn't see anyone. I stood on guard. Then silence, again. "If someone is there, make yourself known," I called out. "If there is a presence here, knock twice." Nothing. I stood there shivering. Why am I doing this? "If there is a presence..." Electricity shot through my nerves to the tips of my fingers. I began to leave back to the hallway to my room. Again, coming from the surface of the table, I quickened my pace. Whatever this was, it was aggressive. Each smack on the table was sharper and louder than the last, making me shake. I broke into a run towards the hallway. One of the chairs fell and hit the floor. I ran down the hall, which was even longer than before. The haunting raps continued, deafening in my ears. It was tough and hard to run. I started to slow down. Darkness crept in on my view, making me feel faint and dizzy. I reached the bedroom and slammed the door. Coming from the door now, my head was heavy, rain pounding on the window. The door burst open, letting in a waft of frigid air. The hallway was black. Dark, malicious shadows started to spill in. Then I woke up. Understanding the core elements in the nightmares you have can give you a previously unknown and better understanding of yourself. Each dream element and dream image has a different meaning, whether it's subconscious, physical, or ironic. Before you break down a nightmare or a dream, you must understand that you have to be completely honest with yourself and aware of what is happening in your waking life that might cause the images that are projected in your dream. Next, it is important that you write down the nightmare as detailed as possible, making note of anything that is specific or that stood out. To break down my nightmare, I'll start from the beginning. At the beginning of my nightmare, I woke up to a noise. This could have been caused by something in my waking life, possibly my neighbor hammering on a wall, or my cat knocking something off a shelf. Hearing something in your waking life can instantaneously have an effect on your dream images, painting a picture using sound as the paint. This is called external sensory stimuli. In this case, it was a terrifying knock within my apartment. This would also explain the rain against my window in my nightmare. It was most likely actually raining outside. On the other hand, what it means to dream of a storm, specifically watching a storm from a window, indicates that I am becoming more aware of spiritual insight. It may also symbolize fortune and love. The next notable element was the cold throughout the entire nightmare. This is because in the wintertime, I like to sleep with the window open, meaning this was a purely physical effect on my body that helped shape this terrifying experience. The cold winter night blowing into my room could also be the cause of having the nightmare in the first place. Feeling cold might have caused me to feel vulnerable. In my nightmare, once I approached my bedroom door, it was already open. This symbolizes my willingness to accept new ideas, in particular, that I am moving toward a greater enlightenment and spirituality. I feel like that I am an open-minded person and willing to accept a lot, so I feel like this is true, and definitely supports the latter. Then there was the hallway. The hallway that doesn't actually exist in my apartment leading to the living room. Not only does the hallway not exist, it was very long and dark. A hallway can be seen as a gateway between worlds. Same with paths and bridges. In the book, Dream Messages from the Afterlife, Visits from the Dead, Rosemary Guiley says, long hallways and corridors are featured in many dream visits. The dreamer walks down a long hallway until they encounter the dead, or they see a dead person coming down a long hallway. In these cases, however, it is usually someone you know who has passed. Next was the chair. To see a chair indicates that my feelings or ideas are being diminished or cast aside. In my nightmare, however, the chair was moving on its own. It is known that ghosts are most commonly dead loved ones, unwilling to move on or lost between the world of the living and the dead, usually only showing themselves in many different forms or projecting their life before they died, more often if they were murdered or died tragically. For something to move the chair, it would have to be more sinister. For instance, a poltergeist. In short, a poltergeist haunts a person or an object rather than a location. It attaches itself to someone without them knowing and feeds off their energy over time, usually causing mental harm. Poltergeists commonly get worse over time. First with knocks, like the ones in my dream, then moving things, like the chair, eventually ramping up to physical harm like pinches, slaps, and pushing. Rarely does a poltergeist show a physical form, which is why I was never able to see it during my nightmare. So what does it mean to experience a poltergeist in a dream? Seeing or hearing a poltergeist means that you have a lack of control in your life, and you could be experiencing some disruptions that are interfering with your goals. In my case, the poltergeist was angry and destructive. This could be my subconscious desperately trying to tell me to accomplish the goals I set out. In my nightmare, I am running away from this entity. So if dreaming of a poltergeist means I am not in control of my life or the goals I set, by definition, I am literally running away from my goals and taking control of my own life. Personally, I can say that this is more or less true. But what if we looked at this as the real thing? What if I actually traveled down the corridor to a different yet familiar realm of the undead? Standing in my living room that wasn't quite my living room, faced with a presence of a nasty spirit. I did experience a real feeling of dread. It would also explain why it was so hard to escape back to my room down the frozen hallway with a malicious entity chasing behind me. Maybe it's easy to cross over, but not so easy to cross back. Next, I was in my room and slammed the door, the dark presence behind the door crashing against it. Then, just before I awoke, it swings open, letting darkness into the room. This could be my subconscious breaking through, and the darkness could be my fears flooding into my life, making me face them. Or, I could have let a poltergeist into the real world. To know your nightmares and the meaning behind them is a personal journey. And to accept your nightmares is the first step in understanding yourself, though they can be difficult to experience. It is important to face your fears and conquer them, rather than letting them consume you. I encourage others to analyze their dreams and look within. With practice and patience, maybe one day you can master the dream world and control it, and wander to different planes of existence. But remember, don't wander too far. You might get lost. This story was written by me, Charlie Conlon, with music by Joe Conlon. I hope you enjoyed this terrifying nightmare. Please take time to rate the podcast on iTunes and let me know if you enjoyed it in the comments. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KMN Podcast to get more information and keep updated on all things nightmarish. Remember, if things get too scary, you can always wake up.